friends! Welcome to Coding Garden with CJ. I'm sorry. Weird things are happening. Just a second. Oh! It's the worst way to start a live stream. My live stream is actually playing on my other computer. Weird things are happening with my laptop. Ugh. Oh no. Ugh. Hello, welcome to Morning Tea with CJ. The show where I browse the web, kind of just hang out, see what's new in tech and JavaScript and such. And here's the song. Well, it's Morning Tea with CJ, Morning Tea with me. Let's browse the web and see what's new. Yeah, you and me. Well, it's Morning Tea with CJ, Morning Tea with me. Let's browse the web and see what's new. Yeah, you and me. I'm so off. I'm so off. Weird things are happening. There's my screen, but now my computer's being all weird. Let me try to fix that. Hello! Welcome. That's okay. I think I'm okay with that. All right. Yes, welcome to Morning Tea with CJ. I'm late. And I'm okay though. We're gonna get started. So on this show, I browse the web, see what's new in tech and stuff like that. I have this GitHub repo. It's github.com/codinggarden/morning-t, where I post all the links to the things I find and any code that I potentially write on the stream itself. Today, I am drinking yerba mate. It's probably my favorite tea. Second favorite, green tea, and that's about all I drink. I'll drink other tea. Actually, I like green tea, but like jasmine green tea is good. Black pineapple tea, that sounds awesome. And Amy has a chai latte. Very good. All right, this actually is going to be a shorter stream today, maybe no more than 45 minutes. Got cleaning to do, I'm moving, I'm frazzled, but we're here. And you may notice that I'm on the other side of the screen, and actually my camera is still really weird. Let me fix this. I'm in a different room today, so there's a slightly different setup. Woo! Okay. The magic is gonna go away for a second. Oh god. Okay, we're just gonna have to deal with it. My laptop is a little transparent, but we're just gonna deal with it. Okay, and also I will make this so that you can actually see it. Right there. Cool. Let's click some links. Finally, we're only, what, 10 minutes in? This first one looks interesting. Netflix releases Polly, a client-side library to record and replay HTTP interactions. Record, replay, and stub HTTP interactions. So I guess this could come in handy for like testing requests to like APIs. Seems like you could also use it for like maybe even bots or something like that. Morning, Ion. Welcome to the stream. And Merchan, welcome. And Merchan, it's totally fine you didn't tune in last night. It was just as frazzled as I am right now. I actually did do a couple of the ones that you suggested for the code katas, though. Okay, let's check it out. Fetch and XHR support, first class test helpers. Yeah, so I think the main use of this library is probably testing. Why Polly? Keeping fixtures and factories in parity with your APIs can be a time-consuming process. Polly alleviates this by recording and maintaining actual server responses without foregoing flexibility. So typically in tests, you want to isolate something. So with this, you can emulate a server response. So like make a response, copy that response, and then when you're testing, this will give you back a legit response, but it's just being replayed and you're not talking to the actual server. So it helps with testing. So that's cool. Let's see how to use it. Bring it in, describe a test, server.get, intercept all Google Analytic requests and respond with a 200. Yeah, so in your code, anywhere you make a request to this URL, it's basically intercepting that call and just responding with a 200 status code. Very cool. It looks great. Let's read the comments. Can someone explain it like I'm 5? Okay. Disclaimer, I'm just looking at the library for the first time, so I might be wrong. Feel free to correct if I am. When you write a test for some code that makes some HTTP requests, you might have some of the following needs. A, you want to speed up your tests. B, you don't want to send a ton of unwanted test requests to a bunch of different endpoints. And C, you want to stub different responses from those requests to test that your code handles differences properly. I think the main idea being, like, especially if you're doing unit testing, you don't want to depend on an API that's actually up and running and depend on it always returning the same thing. So with something like this, you basically create like a fake API that always returns what you're expecting, so you can actually focus your tests on specific functions and things that are like calling the API. Cool. Is this basically the client-side version of knock? Pretty awesome stuff. Let's find knock on npm. HTTP server mocking for Node.js. Knock is an HTTP mocking and expectations library for Node.js. Knock can be used to test modules that perform HTTP requests in isolation. Yeah, so this would be, I'm guessing, like a backend thing. But technically, Polly looks like it can be used on the front end or the back end. So, yeah, I don't know. Cool. It seems pretty sweet. I mean, I haven't done much testing recently, but might give it a try when I do. Actually, I'm going to post a link to this one. Nope, nope, nope. Cool. This next one, Uniloc, Universal JavaScript Route Parsing in 1.3 kilobytes. Cool. Matching URIs to named routes. I'm curious if this is like a client-side library or a server-side library. Like typically if you're using a front-end framework like Vue.js, they have their Vue router, which allows you to do client-side routing. There's React router for React. There's like the built-in router in Angular. There's UI router if you're using like Angular 1x. And this is apparently just a small little library for doing routes. Let's see what you can do. Configure your routes. Let's take a quick stretch. This to me seems like it's server-side because you're actually specifying the HTTP verb. And typically on the client side, everything's like a get route. Interesting. A quick plug. So I've talked about this video I did probably like a year ago, but if you go in the JavaScript playlist, there's this front-end face-off video, and in this video I build a very simple MVC-style framework from scratch in like roughly 30 minutes, but in that I actually build a router from scratch also, so you can see how I did it there. It's probably doing similar things to this, but basically a router says like when the URL is this, I want to show this specific page or the specific component. So I build one from scratch. You can check that out. Safar, hello, welcome to the stream. And Jimmy, hello, welcome. Cool. Yeah, so this seems interesting. Are there any comments? No comments yet. I'll link to it. And I actually did a when I went to VueConf back in March, I did a day-long workshop with Evan Yu, the creator of Vue.js, and it was what was it called? It was like advanced features in Vue. Basically, in a day-long workshop, we wrote from scratch some of the things that are internal to Vue and kind of like just to discuss like how Vue.js internals actually work. And part of that was using the reactivity system of Vue to build like a small version of Vue Router, which was pretty cool. Things like that are just a great exercise to figure out and to learn like what goes into all these libraries that you're using. Yeah. Alistar, hello. Flamingo, hello, welcome in. Cool. I am going to move on to r/webdev. Let's refresh the page. Okay, this is a self-post. What CSS methodology do you use and why? This will be good to just learn about what some of the methodologies are. I learned about some recently. Like there's some's like semantic rules for like what you should name your CSS classes and how you should organize your code. Let's see. Yeah, BEM is the one that I've heard the most about. BEM for sure. Breaking everything down into blocks makes so much sense, and if you use a preprocessor, you can split everything up into small logical files of no more than 100 lines, which makes making changes a lot easier. Yeah, so there's the CSS Tricks article on BEM, but BEM stands for block, element, and modifier, and it's a naming convention for your CSS classes. So, like a block component would be like the class name for the component itself. Some element inside of that block would be appended with double underscores and then like the name of that element. And then modifiers would be modifiers of the block, and those are dash dash and like the modifier that you're creating. So if you've ever used a CSS framework, some of them actually use this style to define all their classes. But basically this methodology is used to keep your CSS code organized instead of just having like random class names all over the place. Carlos, hello, welcome to the stream. Yeah, and so this would be examples of modifier like big button, big red button, big blue button, and all of the classes would have a naming convention like that. I personally have like never used this, but seems good. If I were building out like a CSS library or like had lots of CSS classes, I would definitely use something like this. Yeah, another vote for BIM. For modularized projects, CSS modules renders methodologies unnecessary. CSS module is a CSS file in which all class names and animation names are scoped locally by default. Yeah, and so what they're saying with CSS modules is basically you can define a set of CSS rules and put it in a single file, and then when you bring that file in, those CSS classes and rules are only applied to like one specific component or like one thing that you bring it into. So by doing that, you're not going to run into any naming conflicts or anything like that. Yeah, and basically it's like inline styles because it only applies to that one specific element, so there wouldn't be any overwriting from other classes that are defined and stuff. Meow. I'm reading the chat. I'm just Cool. So that's cool. Let's see what else we got. Hope and prayers. This is the methodology that a lot of people use when working with CSS. Nice question. I learned something. Cool. Atomic, functional, whatever you want to call it, CSS. This is another one that I've heard of. The idea of like atomic and functional can also be applied to like the way you structure your JavaScript code too. Tachyons, built for designing. I'm guessing they're saying you can actually see an example of it in their CSS. I don't see it though. Yeah, I'm not going to click through these things, but interesting stuffs. What else is there? Atomic CSS cut our development time down by 20 to 25%. Let's look up Atomic CSS. This is like a tool. Yeah, there's a CSS Tricks article. Let's define exactly what Atomic CSS is. As Atomic CSS, also known as functional CSS, has been gaining in popularity, some confusion has occurred about similar related terms. There are different ways to write Atomic CSS. One example would be this. BGR-blue. The term atomic was coined by Thierry Koblenz in his foundational article challenging CSS best practices. But what makes it atomic? A programmatic approach to Atomic CSS involves using a build tool to automatically generate styles based on what it defines in the HTML. So background color, color, and padding. Very interesting. It's almost like declarative. Like the literally the classes you're applying to it do exactly what they say they are. And I think that's maybe where the term atomic comes from, because atoms are small. They're like little pieces that you build up. Paradise Blood, hello, welcome to the stream. Longhand versus shorthand. The longhand style favors more readable class names, while shorthand favors brevity. Yeah, so I think Atomic CSS is literally like creating styles that will apply just one specific CSS property, but then you use multiple atomic styles to get all of your styles together. Musa, hello, welcome to the stream. Yeah, interesting stuff. I'm gonna keep moving though. I'll post a link to all these things though. It's don't save that. Stop it. I didn't take my allergy medicine today. I just remembered. The pollen levels in Denver have just been so insane lately. And I have this giant tree right outside that window, and it's just raining pollen. It's not. I guess it is pollen. Whatever kind of tree it is, it's like pollen for that tree, but it's all over the place. Thanks, Carlos. And then let's link to those CSS Tricks articles, because those are good. And there's also the one on BEM. One thing, like, I personally need to up my CSS skills. And I've been thinking about maybe like a challenge series where I'm on a specific time limit and I have to recreate the layout of like some popular website using just CSS, like no libraries or anything like that. I think that'd be pretty fun. I don't know if I could do it in 30 minutes, but it'd be a good challenge for me to start to up my CSS skills. CSS is probably my weakest area when it comes to front-end development. I lean very heavily on like CSS frameworks when I shouldn't. Yeah, Dan is saying in San Diego the pollen's pretty bad too. I guess it's all over. Yeah, it must be like all over the U.S. Ooh, interesting one. How the modern containerization trend is exploited by attackers. So this is like the Docker trend, the way of deploying apps in containers. Cryptojacking invades cloud. How modern containerization trend is exploited by attackers. Cryptojacking is maybe like where a malicious user gets access and gains control of a remote server and then uses that server to mine for cryptocurrency. Chromstack Security Center found 17 malicious Docker images stored on Docker Hub for an entire year. Super interesting. So, a Docker image. So, I guess, should I define containerization? Can I define containerization? I don't know. So, if you're familiar with like backend deployment and working with servers, for a very long time, I guess containerization has been around a long time too. But the thing that people used to do more often was virtualization, where you would have one really big beefy server, and it would be running a hypervisor, which would allow you to virtualize multiple computers on that one computer. And so if you've ever heard of like a virtual private server, that is what that is. You have this big beefy machine, but then you have 20, 30 different virtualized machines all running on it. And they're all separate. They're all like, are basically like a virtual operating system running side by side, but they're totally and completely separate from each other. And each one could be maintained and owned by a different person. That's how like shared virtual private servers worked. Containerization takes a different approach. Instead of having separate operating systems altogether, you have one base operating system, and then each container shares the kernel and shares like the common things that each specific container would need. It shares that, but then your code is running inside of a container, which is hopefully totally and completely blocked off from all the other containers. And Docker Hub, I guess we could click the what is Docker. So Docker is a way of working with containers in the cloud and locally on your machine. Let's go to the Docker Hub, because the Docker Hub is essentially a place where you can search for hundreds of thousands of different images that people have created. You can find just like a bare bones essential Ubuntu image. You can find an image that has a specific piece of software installed on it, and all you have to do is install that image, and your Docker container has that software ready to go. And so that's why containers themselves are like getting a lot of traction, because they really help with development. Instead of having to manually install lots of dependencies and like do all this server management, you can create a Docker image that describes all of that in terms of what software to install, what operating system to install, and then you just run one command and it just spins up that container that has all that stuff ready to go. But the reason I talk about that is because what they're saying is some people have hosted Docker images on Docker Hub that are probably labeled as like something that's very useful, but hidden inside of that container is some malicious code. Checking in on the chat. James Phillips says they're in Denver too. I actually run the Denver Vue.js meetup, but Saturday I'm moving to New York City for a few months, so I'll be gone. But it'll keep happening. If you check out meetup.com, we actually have some speakers planned for the next few months. Merritt Sean says, I don't normally use CSS, but when I do, it's pretty much the Peter Griffin window blinds GIF. I'm going to show that if you have not seen it. CSS, Family Guy. Yes, this one. I mean, if you've ever watched this stream, this is like me when I'm dealing with CSS. Hey, William, welcome to the stream. Yeah, it's great. But yeah, honestly, like if you have watched the stream, like the moment I have to start debugging CSS, I like panic slightly and just start like throwing property values at it to see if it'll work. I don't know. Okay, but I'm not going to read this whole article, but let's get to the juice. By pushing malicious images to Docker Hub registry and pulling it from the victim system, hackers were able to mine 544.74 Monero, which is equal to $90,000. That's a pretty good scheme. Cool. Yeah, I'm not going to read the whole article, but basically, hackers used the Docker infrastructure to mine for cryptocurrency. That's the title. All right, let's click like 2 or 3 more links, and then I gotta go because I'm still cleaning my house. Let's see. Why not? We've got a lot of entry-level people that watch this channel. Quick tips on how to write a strong resume for an entry-level developer position. And this is a self-post. William says, fishing with rocker whale? Not familiar with it. Docker. Oh, get it? You're making a joke because it's a fish. Well, it's a giant fish. It's not a fish. It's a mammal. Whales are mammals? I don't know. All right, let's read this one. A strong resume is the easiest way to get the interview, especially in a crowded junior developer market. There are way too many junior developers fresh out of college who apply to as many positions as they can using a shotgun approach with half-assed resume and no clue what employers are looking for. Here are some tips on how to make your resume stand heads and shoulders above the frenzy. Write a strong professional summary. Front-end developer with a strong personal portfolio, well-versed in front-end ecosystem, and quick to adopt and master new technologies that arise. Okay. Here's a bad example. Highly motivated team player who communicates well with teammates. Okay. Quick learner with strong work ethic. Yeah, I mean, this is like extremely generic. I think one point is you want to be precise so it doesn't sound like you're just saying things for the sake of saying things. And by being precise, it makes it sound more legitimate. Give precedent to demanded skill sets. Yeah, so like if you're applying for a web developer job, it is pretty, I mean, it's like assumed that you do know HTML and CSS. I guess I would assume. So like, you want to make the, for one, you probably want to tailor your resume more to the place that you're applying to. So like if a place uses React, then you want to probably bump React up to the top of your skill list if you know that thing. And William is mentioning portfolio in the chat. And this is like definitely this point here. So especially for people that are like self-taught or like going to a boot camp or something like that, you're potentially competing with computer science graduates who have like internship experience or like classwork experience. And the way you fill that gap is by having a portfolio of projects, personal projects, open source contributions, really anything. And these projects don't have to be like world changing or like totally innovative ideas. Really, they just have to be apps that show you know how to build apps. So if you're applying for like full stack developer positions, you should have apps or projects in your portfolio that are full stack apps that show you know how to build the front end, you know how to build the back end, you know how to structure the database, you know how to communicate between all of them, and all of that code is hopefully hosted on a place like GitHub where a potential employer can just click around and like see your actual code. Yeah, and really having those projects makes up for not having work experience. It's never like a complete replacement, but if you're trying to find a job and you don't have work experience, this is like the least you could do. And William says he agrees, and that's what he looks for. Make sure they are of good quality and pleasing to the eye. Yeah, it also depends on the kind of job that you're applying to, because if you're applying to like a back-end developer position, typically they would probably care more about like the API code and the structure of the code and not necessarily how it looks. That said, you might have to go through like a hiring manager or a recruiter before that, and so if they see an ugly app, they may not know that you actually do have good backend development skills. I kind of talked about this a lot teaching at Galvanize, which is where I'm about to go teach again. You could do like the most amazing capstone project, and you could have like analyzed all this data and like wrote some crazy cool algorithms, but if your presentation doesn't look good and your app is not pleasing to the eye, like nobody's going to care. Like you can, like, you might have written some of like the best algorithmic analyzing code ever or data processing code ever, but if you don't have a way to present it, no one is going to know or really even care how good it is, which is kind of sad to say, but at the same time, humans are visual beings. They like seeing things. They like good presentations. So I would often see capstones where the best presentation wasn't necessarily the most complex app or like the person that like did the most complicated coding thing. It was the person that had like a really polished presentation, a really nice UI, a really good story for what they built and why they built it. So that goes a long way. Make sure your resume is clean, eye-catching, and well-written. Cool. Let's read this. I think this might be a joke. Recruiter. Do you have any experience developing sites that use Shopify? Developer. I have a strong work ethic. Recruiter. Sorry, sir. We honestly just need someone who has experience with Shopify. Developer. I think outside of the box, though. Cool. I will link this. There's probably lots of good tips in the comments as well as stuff that I didn't mention. Yes. And here's that. Okay, let's click like 2 more links, and then I'm gonna go, and then you should go watch Coding Train if it's still happening, because I was watching that earlier. Or just go watch that right now. I'm literally just browsing the web. You could do this yourself. Let's take a quick stretch. Okay, this one has a lot of upvotes. Let's click on it. Let's broadcast the key over Bluetooth. Oh, and use HTTP. No one will know. The creators of Tapplock, probably. So the website is Pentest Partners. I'm guessing this is someone that like hacked into some sort of Bluetooth thing. There we go. How to open Tapplock over Bluetooth, low energy, and under 2 seconds. So let's look at what is Tapplock. Looks like it's a padlock where you have to use a fingerprint. Okay. So it's great. Looks secure. You got to tap it. But basically what they're saying is using a tool to analyze like the Bluetooth packets that happen when you connect to it, you can actually get the key, which would allow you to just immediately open it without having a fingerprint. Alistar is asking, what's the name of the resting app you're using? The one I use is for Mac. It's called Timeout by Dejal. You can configure it for, that's not it. Oh. Just a second. You can configure it for whatever amount of time to wait for micro breaks and amount of time to wait for longer breaks. There it is. If you're on Windows, let's close that. If you're on Windows, there's iLeo. It's another one. And if you're on Linux, I don't know, but I know there's some out there for Linux too. There we go. Josh is asking, I keep seeing stuff on WebAssembly. What is that exactly? Probably don't have enough time to talk about it, but WebAssembly is a new web standard that allows basically lower level programming inside of the web browser. Like JavaScript is a very high level language. WebAssembly is literally an assembly language that would allow you to write very performant and lower level code. And now that exists, there are tools out there that allow you to compile C++ for the web, or take some of these native languages and compile them to run inside of a browser because WebAssembly actually exists. And Josh is saying they saw on Reddit you could unscrew the back and just pull the lock right out. Cool. Yeah, these kind of articles are always super fun. So I've been to DEF CON a couple of times, and a lot of times people do talks on how essentially they hacked into and cracked like consumer level devices that appear to be secure, and that's just what they did here. It's crazy how much a lot of companies don't put that much money into or thought into making something actually secure. They a lot of times use like security through obscurity, or they're like, oh, no one will ever try to break this or inspect how it actually works. So, but they do. People like this. I'll post this article. I'm not gonna read all of it in front of you, but basically they have like a Bluetooth packet scanner. They're looking at packets from when you connect to it. They steal the key. They send it. They open it up instantly. Totally pwning the Tapplock smart lock. Cool. Derek, what's up? A dev at his company said WebAssembly is just another replica of CGI. Didn't know if you knew anything about the similarities or what WebAssembly is bringing to the table that's new. As far as I know, like CGI were like server scripts, and it was like a way of basically writing web CGI, Common Gateway Interface. In computing, CGI offers a standard protocol for web servers to execute programs that execute like console applications. In a way, this was kind of like the first like server-side programming where like you could make a request, it actually executed code on the server. As far as I understand, WebAssembly has nothing to do with that. Maybe you're talking about a different CGI. But like CGI typically was like server-side code being executed. WebAssembly is just lower-level code that can run inside of your browser. Yeah, and honestly, it would be fun to do an episode just like on WebAssembly itself. We could talk about what it is. We could compile some C++, run it in the browser. Abbreviated WASM, a binary instruction format for a stack-based virtual machine. So this is a stack-based virtual machine that's running inside of a web browser that has implemented this standard. WASM is designed as a portable target for compilation of high-level languages like C, C++, and Rust. They're calling these high-level languages, but essentially these are compiled languages, meaning to get them to run on a computer, you need to compile them for an explicit CPU instruction set. Every CPU has a set of assembler commands that actually allows code to run on there. And so the WebAssembly standard is basically a virtual machine that's inside of the browser that has a set of instructions that allows your code to run a bit faster, be a little bit closer to the metal. Yeah, Derek, and I don't know if I'm talking about the same CGI, but I think, and if so, it's totally different. Yeah, WebAssembly is fun. I linked that. I think I'm going to end it there. Oh, here's a link. Let's just click this. I didn't see it. Maybe you guys saw that. Hello, WebAssembly. A look at WebAssembly through a fantasy console. Oh, I feel like I clicked this a month ago or weeks ago when this came out. What is WebAssembly? The name WebAssembly is actually a bit of a misnomer because it's a statically typed instruction format targeting stack-based virtual machines, which is much higher level representation in contrast with your typical registered WebAssembly. But at the same time, it's lower level than something like JavaScript code would allow you to get. Cool. Yeah, it has a really interesting syntax. I definitely looked at this article a few weeks ago. But I guess the cool thing about it is like you can create these WebAssembly modules and then call them from like actual JavaScript code, and then you have code that's running very fast, like closer to the metal. Yeah, I'll link this. And I don't know. So I finally signed up on Medium, and I'm getting these digests of like new Medium articles, but for whatever reason, I mean, I think it kind of makes sense. Like right now, I have this mentality of like, I only want to read things that are new, that have been posted like within the past couple of days or like even hours. But like these Medium digests, I'm getting linked to articles that came out like 3 months ago. They're still pretty interesting, but I'm just trying to think about like, do I care more about like what's new, or should I actually like take a step back and like read some of these older articles, which are still probably like valid and interesting? I don't know. Okay, that's it for me today. This was fun. I'm gonna go clean, and I will see you tonight. Hopefully, I don't want to reschedule tonight. But tonight I do plan to work on the full stack forum that I started on the 8-hour live stream. So if you check my channel, there is this. I gotta move these, but this evening, 8:20 p.m. Mountain Time. Convert to your local time zone. If you click this video, it'll tell you what time it is in your local time zone. But I'm gonna add some features to the full stack forum that I started working on during the 8-hour live stream. Awesome. See you later, Derek. See you later, Alistar. Thanks everyone else for tuning in. I believe Coding Train is still. I think he usually streams for a while. Coding Train. Yes, he's still live. You all should go here and watch.
The model is just incredibly good.
Watch Dan on Coding Train. He's live right now. All right. Have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night, wherever you are in the world. And I'll see you this evening, most likely. Here's this.